Today we're going to talk about what 2026 is likely to bring in geopolitics. We're going to zoom out and focus on the deep shifts, the forces that move slowly, reshaped everything around them, and determine what the headlines will look like years from now. My name is Elvira Bary. I'm a writer born in the USSR and now living in California. I've spent years inside two worlds that are almost opposite, and that perspective helps me compare, notice patterns, and see how power behaves when it starts believing it has no limits. Here's our roadmap for today. The instinct trap: why strange people end up as our leaders. The age of self-made reality: why more leaders are choosing narrative over facts. The status trap: how looking strong turns into reckless decisions. Resource distribution: why 2026 becomes a fight over who gets protected first. If you like this kind of big picture analysis, please like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm bring these videos to people who want depth, not just drama. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can use Super Thanks, Buy Me a Coffee, or PayPal. All the links are in the description. And one quick personal request. If you've read my Russian Treasures historical series or my fantasy novel The Girl from the Labyrinth, please consider leaving an Amazon review. I am building a new readership in English. I've been writing since I was 15, and before the war, I published 17 novels and textbooks in Moscow. In the American market, reviews are the bridge between a book and its future readers. They help the algorithm understand who the book is for and help it reach the people who will actually love it. If you are in the mood for something imaginative and dark, in the spirit of Harry Potter but with a cool young queen at the center, The Girl from the Labyrinth is the book I recommend with all my heart. It became an instant bestseller on a major Russian fantasy platform right before the war, and then that entire world collapsed. It's one of my dearest book babies, and I want to give it a second life. All right, now let's get back to reality. The instinct trap. Here's the key to understanding so much of the political chaos we're watching right now. We are living in a world where our internal software, the instincts shaped by millions of generations, no longer fits the environment we've built around ourselves. Without that baseline, geopolitical forecasts are mostly just fortune-telling. That's why I need to start here. The mismatch became impossible to ignore about 300 years ago, when industrialization began. Before that, history tended to loop. Empires rose and fell, borders shifted, rulers conquered, and most people lived and died in the same social slot they were born into. If you weren't born into privilege, the odds of becoming somebody were close to zero. Then came the scientific boom and industrialization. Suddenly, smart and resourceful people could break through tradition and climb the social ladder. Ambition met opportunity, innovation spread, more people were pulled into the new system until the world stopped looking like the world our instincts were designed for. And that's when humanity started searching almost desperately for new answers to the old questions. Who should be at the top? Who gets to distribute shared resources? And what gives them the right? So we kept trying to build a new model of life, one that would finally align our rational mind with our sense of what feels right. our instincts shaped by biology, and our values shaped by culture. One experiment after another. Colonial empires dressed up as civilizing missions. Then communism, then fascism, different costumes, the same promise. A designed paradise engineered at scale. None of it worked. Meanwhile, the world kept changing and our personal options kept expanding. Think about what an average person can do today compared to almost anyone in history. Save money, move to a new city, divorce someone they don't love, choose their own path, even vote. And yet the farther we move from the primitive way of life, the louder something inside us kept protesting. This still isn't right. But if it isn't right, what is? When people lose their sense of direction, they start craving certainty. They want someone confident enough to say, "Follow me. I know where we're going. I'll take you to a place where you'll be safe." Those are the people who rise to power in our era. And very often, they don't seize power from us. We simply give them that power willingly. Look at the leaders dominating global politics right now, and you'll notice the same archetype repeating. The strong leader. Not strong in the heroic sense. Strong in the sense that they appear to know where the wheel should turn. The age of self-made reality. Most people are terrified of being wrong. They are terrified of looking foolish. Our leaders don't seem to share that fear. They push forward without visible hesitation, and that can look almost superhuman. Not because they are better than us, but because they possess one advantage that others rarely allow themselves: the freedom to construct a personal reality and live inside it. If they want something to be true, they treat it as true. You cannot easily knock them off their chosen path because they won't give you a fair hearing. They won't sit still for facts. They won't tolerate uncomfortable questions. Their historic mission, as they see it, outweighs any criticism you might offer. And if you insist, they switch tactics. Instead of debating the issue, they attack you. You are disloyal. You are malicious. You are standing in the way of greatness. These people do not live in an imaginary world in the childish sense. Their decisions reshape real life. Armies move because they say so. Budgets get redirected. Courts, police, and intelligence services act on command. Markets react, institutions bend. They can change a great deal, but they cannot erase reality. That's the first problem. Reality still exists, and no ruler's will can repeal it. A leader can deny it, ignore it, or refuse to measure it. The bill still arrives, and it arrives in the form of expensive mistakes that punish not only the leader, but the entire country. So my first forecast for 2026 is to expect serious errors at the very top, in more than one corner of the world. The second problem is something older rulers didn't have to face. We now live in an era of near total visibility. Leaders are watched constantly. Every day brings another clip, another quote, another moment where they publicly display their contempt for norms and rules. That might have been survivable when a ruler lived behind castle walls and rarely had to explain himself. Today, citizens can look at the same behavior in real time and ask a question that used to be unthinkable. Is this elderly gentleman actually acting in my interests? Does he represent my values? Am I truly willing to deny reality alongside him just because he does not like it? Many people will still say yes. A surprising number of adults are still searching for a fully trusted father figure, someone who will punish the enemies, silence the chaos, and make the world feel simple again. That need never disappeared. But the era when the ruler was automatically the father of the nation and everyone else was the child is over. He is no longer a patriarch who can misbehave, punish, reward, and improvise without accountability. He is no longer accepted as a gift from heaven. He is evaluated. He may not understand that yet. Sometimes leaders realize it only when it's too late. But a crisis of trust is not a minor scandal. It's a structural rupture. And in 2026, that rupture is going to show itself clearly in many places. The status games. One of the most important forces to watch in 2026 is status. Not policy, not ideology, not even economics in the narrow sense. Status. There is a type of leader who is genuinely driven by an idea. For them, personal luxury is irrelevant. They don't need medals, rankings, or invitations to elite clubs to feel powerful. Their achievement is the triumph of the belief system itself. History has produced many figures like that. Lenin, Hitler, Stalin, Martin Luther King Jr. Different moral universes, the same psychological structure. The mission comes first, the self comes second. But that is not what dominates the leadership of the most powerful states right now. What we mostly see at the top are leaders whose politics orbit personal achievement. They measure themselves through wins, headlines, prestige, numbers that look good on a chart, and their position inside the big boys club. Their decisions are not just governance. They are a constant public performance of superiority. And that matters. Because once you understand that the game is status, you can predict where resources will go. The war in Ukraine is not about territory, money, or Russia's security, despite the slogans. It is a personal status campaign. Putin's attempt to secure a place in history as a great geopolitical figure, and the people around him, and many leaders watching him, are playing their version of the same game for the same reason. Ambitions itself isn't a problem. The hunger to achieve is one of the engines of civilization. Most human breakthroughs were produced by people who wanted to do something bigger than themselves. The danger begins when ambition disconnects from responsibility and the leader starts believing they can win more by breaking the rules. That is what to watch closely this year. For a leader whose primary fuel is status, losing is not merely unpleasant. It feels like annihilation. It is not I made a mistake. It's I am not who I claim to be. And a threatened identity is one of the most dangerous forces in politics because it can justify almost anything. Putin already crossed that line in 2022. He broke the rules and then began rewriting the story in real time. He was not pursuing conquest, he says. He was protecting Russia from NATO. He was defending his people. Never mind the hundreds of thousands dead. Never mind the destruction of Ukraine. Never mind the long-term damage to Russia's own economy and future. The point is not the logic. The point is the narrative that preserves status. And he won't be alone. In 2026, more leaders will be tempted into the rule breakers club because they will sense that normal methods no longer guarantee victory. They will gamble on shortcuts and test boundaries. Resource distribution. By 2026, Russia has already burned through a large share of its national capacity on the war against Ukraine. China is facing visible stress inside its growth model. That means a lot of what happens next will depend on how the West uses its own resources: money, attention, industrial capacity, and political will. And the West is not a single actor. It's a collection of democracies with different histories and interests. Still, across many developed countries, you can see the same core tension. It's often described as left versus right, liberal versus conservative. But underneath those labels is a simpler question: who should be first in line for resources? One camp, broadly speaking, wants the state to reduce suffering and expand fairness as widely as possible. That instinct is rooted in compassion. It prioritizes social support, anti-discrimination policy, and help for people who are vulnerable, excluded, or struggling. In foreign policy, it often means strong sympathy for victims of aggression and a moral discomfort with power that looks unchecked. The other camp, broadly speaking, wants the state to focus on its own citizens first, especially those who feel neglected by institutions and left behind by economic change. That instinct is rooted in protection. It prioritizes local jobs, affordable housing, public safety, and social cohesion. It tends to be skeptical of policies that feel symbolic while daily problems remain unsolved. Both instincts are legitimate. A healthy society needs compassion and protection. The conflict becomes toxic when people stop seeing the other side as fellow citizens with different priorities and start treating them as enemies with evil motives. The left are often portrayed as either hypocrites performed virtue or naive idealists eager to spend other people's money on symbolic gestures that change little. The right are often portrayed as selfish at the best and outright cruel at worst, people with no moral compass at all. And the real danger begins when opportunists turn this disagreement into a business model. In an attention economy, outrage is profitable. If you want to rise inside the compassion camp, it's tempting to perform moral purity and shame anyone who doesn't speak your language. If you want to rise inside the protection camp, it's tempting to promise simple solutions, turn fear into identity, and treat compromise as betrayal. Both strategies generate clicks, donations, votes, and status. Neither strategy solves the underlying problems. Meanwhile, the pressure points are real and painful. When housing is scarce, healthcare is expensive, and wages feel stuck, people will resent any policy that looks like their needs are last in line. When communities absorb rapid change without enough planning, trust erodes. And when institutions respond with lectures instead of results, alienation hardens into anger. This is why resource allocation will be one of the decisive political forces of 2026. Not because people are cruel, because many feel stretched, uncertain, and tired. And tired societies become easy to divide. A few practical conclusions follow from this. America cannot retreat entirely into itself without paying a price. Trade routes, alliances, and stable partners are part of US prosperity, not charity. America also cannot fund everything, everywhere, forever, while neglecting its own internal fractures. That path breeds cynicism and waste. Immigration can strengthen a country when it's managed with clear standards and real integration. When it is not, it becomes a pressure multiplier on housing, jobs, and social trust. Negotiations over Ukraine may be necessary, but any settlement that rewards aggression and guarantees a new war a few years later is not peace. It's a postponement. Public humiliation of partners and theatrical dominance may feel satisfying in the moment, but it damages trust, investment, and cooperation long after the cameras turn off. So in 2026, both sides will pull hard, trying to steer resources toward what they believe matters most. The countries that do best won't be the ones that win every argument. They'll be the ones that make fewer unforced errors, resist the temptation to dehumanize their own people, and stay anchored in reality rather than slogans. One last factor will amplify all of this: energy. Global industrial growth is slowing. That puts downward pressure on oil demand and prices. Producers will compete harder, new suppliers will try to enter, and weaker players will get squeezed out as others try to defend revenues and influence. Energy shocks don't just change budgets. They change alliances, domestic policies, and the willingness to take risks. If you want to understand 2026, watch how societies allocate scarce resources and watch how the energy market reshuffles power. And now I want to hand this back to you. Here's my question for the comments. In your country, what matters more right now? Truth or status? Do your leaders still get rewarded for being accurate or for looking strong on camera? If you want more analysis like this, the kind that looks past the daily outrage and into the machinery underneath, subscribe and stay with me. The algorithm only pushes depth when it sees that people actually want it. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can use Super Thanks, Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal. All the links are in the description. It keeps this kind of work independent. And one last small favor. If you've read Russian Treasures or The Girl from the Labyrinth, please consider leaving an Amazon review. Reviews are how books find their real readers, especially in English. All right? Happy New Year. May it be calmer than the world is threatening to make it. And may you stay sharp, steady, and hard to manipulate.